Week 24, day 2. Loyalty. We're developing the quality of loyalty. Great story. This powerful story comes out of World War I. It is a story of the friendship between two soldiers in the trenches. Two buddies were serving together in the mud and misery of that wretched European stalemate. Month after month, they lived their lives in the trenches, in the cold and in the mud, under fire constantly. From time to time, soldiers from one side or the other would rise out of the trenches, fling their bodies against the opposing line, and slink back to nurse their wounds, bury their dead, and wait to do it all over again. In the process, those soldiers forged friendships in the misery. Day after day, night after night, terror after terror, they talked of life, of family, of hopes, of what they would do when and if they returned home. On one more fruitless charge, Jim fell severely wounded. While his friend Bill made it back to the trenches, Jim laid suffering beneath the night flares, between the trenches, alone. The shelling continued. The danger was at its peak. Bill knew that between the trenches, in full view of the night flares, was no place to be. Still, Bill wished to reach his friend to comfort him, to offer what encouragement only friends can offer. The officer in charge refused to let Bill leave the trenches. It was simply too dangerous. As the commander turned his back, however, Bill went over the top, ignoring the smell of cordite in the air, the concussion of incoming rounds, and the pounding in his chest. Bill made it to Jim. Sometime later, he managed to get Jim back to the safety. His friend died shortly after Bill had gotten to him. The somewhat self-righteous officer, seeing Jim's body, cynically asked Bill, had it been worth the risk? Bill's response was without hesitation. Yes, sir, it was. My friend's last words made it more than worth it. He looked up at me and he said, I knew you'd come. Loyalty? Now that's absolute loyalty. And you're in a situation, and there's no loss of lives in athletics or in most of the things that we discuss, that we talk about. But there is that friendship that's developed in the difficult times. My greatest friends are those people that when the times were the toughest, they were there to depend on. And I'm not just talking about athletics. One of my very best friends is Don Heron. And he and I sold books together in Georgia, door to door, 12 hours a day. Now that, when you get, in the evening when you get together and you talk about what happened that day and people slamming the door in your face and threatening your life and doing all that, you get to share all those things. And that's what makes for friendships. It's not the good times, although the good times are the much more enjoyable. You know, sorrow shared is half a sorrow. Joy shared is twice the joy. When you win that championship, the thing that makes it so great is you get to share it with 40 or 50 other people. Highlights of my career, getting thrown in the shower after winning a championship. Soaking wet, muddy, filthy, and loving it because you got to share that joy with 50 other people, or 40, or whatever it might be, or in Don's case with one other person, me and Don and Mike Allen, Terry Watson. We sold books door to door. We ate supper every night, recounting the day's events. And to this day, those people are still friends of mine. Because we had that difficult time and we went through it. The loyalty will always be there, no matter what. When I went back to Idabel 44 years after I graduated from high school. The guy that helped me the most resurrect the Ida Bell football program was Don Hara. Don Hara never played football. As far as I know, didn't go to the football games. But that friendship he and I had 44 years before was still there. I knew he'd come. When I needed help, I knew he'd come. Who would you go out in the trenches for? Who do you have in your family, in your church, at your business, on your team? Who would you go out there for? Who would go out there for you? We used to talk about in athletics or in football so many times, the guy back there catching the punt, he's out in the middle of that field. You're in the trenches. You got to go out there and save him. You got to make sure he doesn't get left. If you got the B gap on defense, you got to take the B gap. Don't leave your friends to take your gap for you. This story is so powerful. In a marriage, will your wife come out there for you? Does she have a reason to come out there for you? As a husband, do you have a reason to go out there for her? Would you go out there for her? That's the loyalty. That's the willing to sacrifice self. In this case, the soldier was willing to sacrifice his life for those one set of words. I knew you'd come. Make it a great day.